Hello, everyone. I am excited today to talk to you about biking skills and drills, and we are going to focus on braking, standing, and cornering. Okay, so the purpose of bike skills and drills are the following really to ride safely, improve your performance, develop good efficiency on the bike, enhance your riding abilities, and adapt to the conditions out on the road, whether it's in training and or on a race situation. Okay, so we're going to talk about standing first, and really, standing is used primarily to add power to any aspect of your riding, whether that's on the flats or on some type of climb. And also, a lot of riders and triathletes use it for stretching the back, the legs, just a different position on the bike. But there are certain key elements that make standing more effective and safer. So, to begin, always stand with your hands on the brake hoods. That helps to stabilize the bike. Arms are bent, elbows are close into the body. That also helps to help stabilize your position on the bike. And typically, when you stand, always shift up one or two gears to make it harder because you don't want to spin out when you stand up. Obviously, you're adding a lot more power to your pedal stroke when you stand. So, by gearing up, that keeps your cadence manageable. Okay. Typically, you also want to stand when your feet are in the 90 and 270-degree position. That's just a general rule of thumb. That's not by any means true for every the time you want to stand up, but it just gives you a platform from which to stand. Typically, you're always pushing forward on the pedal to stand and tighten your core. Both of these help. All three of these really help you to have a more stable platform and upper body position while you're standing. Okay, a couple of the things that are specific to standing. Leaning forward, head and chest should be over the handlebars so that you can look down and see your handlebars. This helps to even out the weight distribution on both pedals. And it's important that you, if you do pedal while you're standing, to make sure that there is a even distribution of weight as you pedal, and you'll probably wind up rocking the bike back and forth, and that is perfectly okay to do, and in fact encouraged to help the weight transfer between the pedals and for you to be able to manage the position of the bike as you apply pedal to each or power to each pedal stroke. Okay, so let's take a look here at a few other specific items. When you're actually going to return to your saddle, you stand up for whatever period of time you're going to return to your saddle. You always keep your weight forward, again, over the front of the bike. Have a nice solid grip on your brake hoods and just kind of slip back down into the saddle as though you're sitting down in a chair. Okay? And once you're seated again, shift your gears back down, make it easier, get into that normal cadence that you'd be riding before you stood up. Always practice these kind of situations if you're uncomfortable standing up, on some kind of closed road or parking lot. And do a lot of repeats, 100 meters or so standing and then 100 meters of sitting, and repeat that a lot. Do this in multiple types of situations when you're training, and you get more and more comfortable on your riding. Okay, so let's take a look at a video on standing. Global Cycling Network will give you some more insights on this whole process.
Riding out of the saddle can be a tricky skill to master, and even long-time cyclists may find that they're not actually as comfortable out of the saddle as they are in it. But it might just be that a quick hint or tip is all you need to set you right. Now, one of the reasons for getting out of the saddle in the first place is to use your body weight to help press down on the pedals, which is great, but a number of you tell us that actually you find on flat roads, your pedals end up getting away from you. They turn faster and faster and faster until you've got to sit back down. So, how do you control it? Well, the key is to not just press down with your front foot, but also apply a bit of pressure with your back foot. So what I mean is, using exactly the same principle of standing with your pedals level, you also just put enough pressure through that back foot when the pedal is coming up to control the front foot and the pedal going down. Practicing this is actually quite simple. What you've got to do is knock it into a really easy gear, and so with almost no resistance, just concentrate on pedaling really slowly, and you'll very quickly pick up on the action needed. When you're starting to put these hints and tips into action, it's a good idea to practice them on a gradient. And that's because when you get out of the saddle, you're automatically going to have to move your body weight much further forward. And so that can feel a little bit disconcerting. Doing it on a gradient is going to make the whole process that little bit easier. Now, one issue that we hear crops up quite regularly is not being able to get clear of the saddle. So you literally hit your bum on it every time you try and pedal, and that's particularly prevalent when riding in the drops. And there's a couple of things that you can do. Firstly, and most importantly, you need to move your weight forward so that actually your hips are further forward than the saddle. And that can be disconcerting. And what will really help is if you keep your head up so you're not staring at your front wheel. And then the other thing is to potentially subtly alter your pedal stroke. So what I mean is if you normally pedal heel down, if you pedal toe down, that gives your hips just a bit more clearance over the saddle, literally raising you up by 2 to 3 inches. Most riders will find that they want to pedal slightly slower when they're riding out the saddle. So before you rise up out of the seat, just click up 1 or 2 gears, and that should make the transition seamless. Then when you get back down into the saddle again, just click down 1 or 2 gears, and then you are sorted. Now, in terms of what is the correct cadence to pedal out of the saddle, there isn't one. It's entirely down to the individual, and it will also change depending on just how hard you're pressing on the pedals. The harder you press, the faster you will want your pedals to turn. My max sprinting cadence is probably about 120 RPM, but yet when I'm just gently stood out of the saddle, going pretty steadily, I'm at around 60 RPM. Your upper body should stay pretty still when riding out the saddle. Now, your hips are going to move up and down slightly, but your shoulders should be pretty fixed. Relaxed mind, but just not moving about. And it really helps at this point to rock the bike from side to side. So you want to tip it away from the side that the foot is pressing down on. So when you're pressing down with your left foot, then your bike goes to the right and vice versa. In terms of how much weight is actually going through my arms, well, the answer is not very much. If you were to take them away right now, I would fall over, but it's not like I'm doing press-ups or anything. And in fact, the harder you ride out of the saddle, the less weight you put through your arms, up to the point where you actually start pulling on the handlebars to really get more power out. As we get towards the end of this video, I would like to take the opportunity to make a public service announcement, and that is that if you're getting out of the saddle and you're riding in a group, you need to be quite careful, because as you get out of the seat and you move your body weight forward, it's actually your bike that moves backwards in relation to everyone in the group. So you'll find that you could end up taking out the front wheel of the rider behind you, and that will cause absolute chaos. And it does happen. So the trick is, when you get out of the saddle, is you actually put in a couple of strong pedal revolutions as you get up, and that should stop your bike moving backwards. I think it's worth mentioning that riding out the saddle is going to tend to use more energy than sitting in the saddle and spinning for a given speed. So it's probably worth using it sparingly even when you get really good at it. And it's also worth mentioning that it is a skill like any other. And so if it's not coming naturally to you now, then keep practicing and soon it will do. Just remember the key points. Move your body weight forward, point your toes when you're pedaling, rock your bike but not your upper body, and then also that key skill of using your back foot to control how fast the front foot goes down. There we go. It's as simple as that. Now, for more videos that are entry level here on GCN, then why not click up there or down there for how to improve your cycling confidence.
Okay, So, good information on standing. So let's talk about braking now. So really braking is another key skill to have. And there are lots of times when it's important to have good braking skills. And really, you want to have those skills for cornering, maneuvering, stopping, and a few other aspects of riding. But there are some key elements to this as well, just like there is to standing. So anticipate braking. Anticipate when you need to brake in the situations that are happening out on the road, particularly when you're riding in a group. Fingers are always near the brake, just like you see here in our picture. Um, Typically, you're going to apply both brakes. There are situations when you might apply more pressure to the front or back brake, such as when the roads are nice and dry and really clean and have good surface, you'll apply more power to the front brake, which is the brake that has more stopping power. You'll apply more power to the back brake if the road is maybe wet or uneven or maybe has some gravel or dirt on it. Always pump your brakes when you're in a situation which is requires braking for a long period of time, such as a long descent that has a lot of turns in it. Don't want to ride those brakes because it will heat up your rim very quickly and could cause some problems with your tires. Plus, it just wears down your brakes quite fast. Always try to slide back in your saddle when you brake. This just allows more distribution of weight on the saddle and prevents you from potentially going over the handlebars if you have to brake suddenly. Okay, braking and descending. So braking and descending definitely go hand in hand, and that's particularly true when you have to deal with um, a really curvy road when you descend. So I mentioned earlier pumping your brakes, but this also helps you to maintain a safe speed without putting a lot of undue pressure on the rim. For short, moderate descents, definitely slide back in the saddle and pump your brakes just like you did for the longer descents. And then for the steeper sustained descents, definitely slide back in your saddle, ride slowly down the hill, and pump your brakes. So pumping your brakes is a key to any kind of descent. So always be sure that is one thing that you're adhering to as you're riding down any kind of hill. Okay, so let's take a look at what GCN has to say about braking.
The most important factor to getting better braking is to remember that your front brake is by far and away the most effective way to slow down. Some people actually advocate using only the front brake for effectiveness, and the theory is sound. You get the most effective braking just at the point at which your back wheel starts to rise off the ground, when it can offer no braking force of its own. Now that's all well and good, but there's no reason not to use your back brake either. For those moments when it's touching the ground, it will help you slow down, particularly when you first apply your brakes and you're gauging just how hard you can pull them on. You should almost always apply both brakes together, although not necessarily with the same force. The back brake requires much less. In order to use your front brake safely, you need to adjust your weight distribution on the bike to counter the forces of deceleration. The harder you brake, the more important it is to get your body in the correct position. When riding at speed, I tend to ride on the drops. And one of the main reasons is the extra control we have in this position when riding at high speeds, and a lot of this is due to braking. Not only are your hands really secure in this position, because your body weight is lowered, you're able to cope much better with the increased braking forces. The main issue with braking hard is going over the handlebars, but by straightening your arms and pushing your backside behind the saddle, you can counter that force of deceleration. For gentle braking, it's fine to hold onto the hoods. Your body is in its most upright position here and you have the weakest grip of the bars, but for most situations in normal riding, this is going to be absolutely fine, and I spend most of my riding time in this position. One of the most important tips to help with better braking is to develop the instinct to release the levers if you feel either wheel start to skid. Often a skid can happen so suddenly that you don't feel like you have time to do anything about it, but in most cases you do. Just as your car has anti-lock brakes to improve braking, you can do the same on your bike. You don't have to release the brake entirely, just enough that the wheel regains traction if it slips. This action can take a long time to master, but it's really fundamental to taking your riding ability to the next level. If you do any mountain biking, you have to get this dialed even more quickly, and riding off-road can be a really good way of learning this skill in a slightly safer environment. Generally with braking, it's really important to practice the correct technique so that they become instinctive. When you need to brake in an emergency, you act on instinct. Whoa! So your conscious thought catches up later. It's what makes braking technique so important. It can really help to work specifically on it, so don't be afraid to practice these skills and repeat them. You can also help to dramatically improve your braking by making a couple of inexpensive but incredibly important changes to your bike. If you're that way inclined, you can get away with fudging quite a bit of bike maintenance, but to brake effectively, you need to have effective brakes. How expensive they are is not the issue, we're talking about function, and that means cables and pads. Sticky, gritty cables at best ruin any feel you get from the brake, and at their worst are just dangerous. It's not just power that you lose, but also modulation. If you have to pull hard at the lever to get any kind of response from the brake, you can't feel what the wheels are telling you. Now, it might cost you the price of about 5 cups of coffee, but replacing your brake cables makes an incredible difference. The second mechanical advantage you can get might not actually cost you anything. Make sure your brake pads are well set up so that they strike the rim in the correct place and at the correct time. I'm not a big believer in expensive brake pads working better than stock ones, just make the most of the ones you have. Finally, where to brake is the last piece of the puzzle in improving your braking. Now, of course, most of the time you won't feel that you get to choose where to brake, but small adjustments can make a big difference. Cornering is the biggest example. Braking while cornering is something that should really be avoided as it increases the forces on the tyres and is one of the biggest causes of crashes. Too much braking in a corner can send either the front or the back ends out, but usually the front. So try to get all your deceleration done in advance of the corner. Generally, if you need to keep your speed in check through corners, it is okay to do so, but just scrub your brakes gently to moderate the speed. Don't actually try and slow down. It's also worth being aware of the surface underneath your tyres. Loose or broken roads can dramatically reduce your braking ability, so if you can, look to choose a smooth patch of road on which to brake. Avoid drain covers, white lines, and especially gravel, which can collect in the middle and at the edges of roads.
For more how-tos, click on Simon's spotted helmet.
And if this kind of childish...
Okay, so good information on braking. So let's talk about cornering. Okay, so the last bit of information on braking did cover some elements of cornering, but let's get a little bit more detail on this. So when you're cornering, always look through the turn. Don't just turn your eyes, but look through your exit point, and that will really help you to take you through a good line and be able to exit and get through the corner safely and much more effectively. Lean your bike into the corner, keep your head upright, looking out that exit point, and your inside foot is always up, and your drop the inside knee out and apply pressure to the outside foot and the inside hand. And you can see that in this picture where the outside foot here is straight and applying pressure to the pedal here. Okay? And the inside foot is up and out, and the knee is out, and the hand is putting pressure on the handlebar here. So that really is designed to help you get through the corner more effectively. This foot here is applying a lot of pressure to that pedal to keep the wheels, apply more pressure to the wheels to the ground so they have better traction, and keeping this foot up just keeps your pedal from skipping off the ground when you go through that turn. Applying pressure to this hand and keeping the knee out really helps the bike to maneuver through the corner much better, more effectively, and safer. So these two elements of cornering are very important. Okay, so let's talk about descending. Fast descents with or sharper turns, always definitely be sure you follow those rules. Straighten the outside leg and the inside arm. Resume pedaling after the apex. The only time you might pedal through the corner is if it's a gentle turn, but oftentimes you'll stop pedaling through most turns and you'll resume your pedaling after you finish getting through that apex. Pedaling through the corners certainly, as I mentioned, can be possible but you're going to keep the bike more upright so this inside foot doesn't skip off the ground down here. And as I mentioned previously, definitely plan and sight where you're going to exit out of that turn. Okay, so let's take a look at what GCN has to add in terms of cornering.
This is all you need to know about cornering.
One of the most important things to remember is that you go where you look.
So, make sure you look where you want to go. Now that sounds simple, but it's all too easy to end up looking at the very thing that you want to avoid, like a lamppost or a massive rock. So repeat it like a mantra. Look where you want to go. And where do you want to go? The exit, of course. Always turn your head and look for the point at which the corner finishes and you're going in a straight line again. It's pretty easy to do on gentle curves, but the tighter the corner, the more unnatural it feels, to the point that even really experienced riders can forget to do it. But don't. It's really important.
For anybody new to cycling, one of the strangest sensations is leaning the bike while cornering, but you can't corner at speed without it.
It's hardly surprising that leaning doesn't feel comfortable. Looking at road bike tyres with an untrained eye is hardly confidence inspiring. I mean, look at how narrow they are. How can you trust that? Well, you can. Road tyres are much grippier than you think. Yes, you need to be a bit careful in the rain and on gravel, but on good quality tarmac, you can really lean over. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go too far and too fast, but it's good to know that you can.
There's one thing that you should know about leaning your bike over when cornering, and that is that at a certain angle, an angle that might not feel particularly extreme, you will hit your inside pedal on the floor if it's facing downwards in the 6 o'clock position. So don't pedal through fast or tight corners.
And better than that, drop your outside pedal to the 6 o'clock position and put your weight through there. It makes the other pedal as far out of harm's way as possible, and it actually helps to give your tyres even more grip, making you more secure on the road.
So, if you can get those 3 techniques dialed, it'll make a massive difference to your ability and your confidence. And remember, GCN is your one-stop destination for all things cycling, and you can subscribe for free by clicking on the globe.
You can indeed. Right, 2 more videos which might be relevant to you now. Cornering is, of course, a very integral part of descending, but there are other aspects to that too. You can find out tips on descending just down here.
Okay, so let's reinforce some of the ideas of cornering by watching a different style of video, which might help reinforce some ideas that we've discussed so far. Let's take a look at this video.
Hi, welcome back to Cycling Secrets. This video we're going to have a quick look at cornering. There's more than one way to corner on a bike, and which method you choose will depend on a range of factors, including your level of skill, the visibility you've got, the camber and consistency of the corner you're going around, and the sharpness of that corner, and your speed and any other riding conditions. Cornering is all about shifting weight, but however you're doing it, there's some general advice that you should always use. Drop your torso to lower your center of gravity. This will mean getting into the drops usually. Anticipate the safe speed you can take the corner before you hit it, and slow if necessary. This is dependent on the corner sharpness, the road surface wetness, other riders around you or traffic. When choosing a line around your corner, wherever possible, you want to cut into the corner late and use the outside, inside, outside line, seen here. This will give you the greatest visibility and maximize your speed through the corner. So approach a corner wide, cut into it late. You should be endeavoring to hit the apex of the corner and come out of the corner wide on the other side. Of course, in doing this safely, you need to pay close attention to traffic and the road surface, but looking where you want to go will give you greater control. Let's have a look at the different kinds of cornering, or the different techniques. The most common method is leaning, where you angle both yourself and the bicycle. This is a suitable method when you can choose your line around the corner, the road is relatively wide, and you have good visibility. To lean through a corner effectively, just move your weight slightly back on the saddle. Ensure your inside pedal is up and your outside pedal is down. If the corner is sharp and you continue pedaling and the inside pedal is down, you risk hitting it on the road. Put your weight onto the outside pedal, and pointing your inside knee towards the apex of the corner will shift your center of gravity inside the tire line, which will also help. The next technique is counter steering, and this is a great technique for when you need to correct your direction within the turn. So it's good for descents and uncertain or changing corners, or whatever the conditions may change suddenly, possibly where there's other riders or traffic around you. The idea is to lean the bike more than your body. To counter steer effectively, you need to keep your body vertical and incline the bike beneath you. This is most easily done by extending your inside arm and pressing on your inside hand. Changing the downward weight on the inside hand will give you greater control. You can push down to increase the angle of the turn and lighten it to reduce. The final technique is steering, and this is less commonly used, but it is useful to learn for conditions that are slippery or with an uneven surface, where leaning the bike could result in it slipping out from underneath you. Essentially, you're going to keep the bike vertical and turn the handlebars. It will feel a bit awkward to begin with, but as with all skills, it's worth developing because it gives you a better understanding of how your bike works and how you work with it. You need to keep your bike relatively vertical, shift your weight forward and slightly to the inside, push down and forward with your outside arm, and so turn the handlebars into the corner. I know we say this every time in almost every video, but it bears repeating. Practice and playing with these techniques will give you added skills, abilities and awareness on the bike, so be deliberate about practicing them. Find some quiet road and practice cornering with all of these different techniques. Learning how your bike works and how you work with it will keep you safer, more aware, and more confident. Okay, thanks again. See you next time, and remember, whatever you want, whatever you need, let us know.
Okay. All right, so good information on cornering, different perspectives with those two videos. That certainly helps you to be a better rider. Okay, so let's talk about some bike drills. A couple of drills that will help you to be able to master maneuvering your bike better and feel more confident on your bike. General tips about bike drills: always practice them in parking lots or on the grass to stay safe. Practicing them on closed roads can also be definitely very effective because that's the environment that you're going to be on. Start with the basics, which is what we're going to do today. Progress from easier to more advanced drills, depending on what kind of skill you currently have, and then follow the progression patterns, and I'll show you what that means in our drills today. Okay, so we're going to talk about one-hand riding progression drills. So obviously riding with one hand is not something you do on a regular basis as part of normal riding, but there are going to be times when you need to ride with one hand. That may be primarily to eat or drink, but you may need to adjust your helmet, or maybe you get something on your bike, or something that you need to deal with with one hand off the handlebars. So it definitely becomes an important skill because you will wind up having to do this more often than you think. And it's super critical at times, especially when you need to be sure that you're eating and drinking during the ride. Okay, so when we talk about one-hand riding and you're a beginner rider, so both hands are always typically on the brake hood. That's your standard riding position. Certainly you'll change that quite a bit throughout your ride. But in order to get comfortable with taking or riding with one hand, I suggest, let's say, lift the left hand slightly off the bar, lightly grab the bar with your right hand. You don't need to grab the bar really tight with your right hand, but just maintain the grip that you had before lifting the left hand off the bar. Okay? And when you do that, though, typically there's going to be extra pressure being put on the right hand onto the bar. So you may adjust your body weight just slightly to the left, since the left hand is off the bar. That just kind of evens out that weight distribution that happened when you took your left hand off the bar, and vice versa. Okay? So a progression from this drill will be to do a shoe grab and a bottle pickup, and let's cover what that means. Okay, let's talk about the shoe grab. So the shoe grab really is you taking one hand off the handlebar and reaching down to grab your shoe. So there are certain things that you can do to progress to make that easier and more difficult. All right, so phase one really is to bring, let's say you're going to lift your left hand off the bars, to bring your left foot up to the 0 degrees position and reach down and touch the foot at the 0 degrees. That's the highest point on the pedal stroke, and it just makes it easier and safer for the first time that you're going to go through this drill. Then you can do the same thing by making it more difficult by moving the foot to the 90 and the 180 degree position. So the foot is getting further and further away from you and just making it that much easier. Okay, but during this particular phase, you're not pedaling. You're just keeping the foot stationary and reaching down and grabbing. So you can practice that by going in each position over time and doing it on both the left and the right foot. Okay, phase two then is to reach down and grab the calf while you're pedaling. So you continue to pedal and do that for about 10 or 15 seconds, and then come back up and put your hand back on the bar. Repeat with the opposite hand and get used to reaching down while you're still pedaling. Okay. And then the last phase of this is to continue to pedal while grabbing your shoe or heel. So you're reaching further down and putting that situation where you have to actually counterbalance the bike while you are pedaling, which becomes a fairly advanced skill, but one that really helps you to gain confidence in your ability to maneuver the bike with just one hand. Okay, so that's a shoe grab progression. Let's talk about a bottle pickup progression. So the bottle pickup progression is probably one of the higher skill or advanced skills that you'll need. Again, it's all about riding with just the one hand. And in this situation, typically you are not pedaling. People who are advanced will pedal through this drill, but most often the process is really just to put a bottle on the ground, ride by, pick it up, put it in your bike, and then continue to pedal on. So key points to this. What do? Remember to shift your body weight. Okay, when you take your hand off the bar. Okay, as you approach the half, typically it's a half-filled bottle that keeps it stable on the ground. Keep the right hand on the brake hood. Okay, if you're doing this with your left hand, put pressure on the right hand, leaning the bike slightly right, and stop pedaling and keeping your feet around the 90-degree position. Some people like to keep the inside foot that's closest to the bottle in the 0-degree position, but 90 or 0 degrees is most often used. And as you ride past the bottle, lean over, pick up the bottle, keep that pressure on the right hand, and pick it off the ground. It's key to keep that pressure on the right hand to help counter steer the bike. Okay. So progression could be maybe use a taller bottle or a shorter bottle for advanced riders, and that just makes it that much easier or harder. Again, like any drill, practice this in a nice, safe area. Do it over and over to get more comfortable riding with just one hand and having to deal with these kinds of situations. Okay, I hope you found this presentation useful. Lots of good skills to have in terms of riding your bike. And until next time.